Today in the studio, folks, I've got a real treat for you, especially if you're out there breaking rules, being non-compliant. Michelle Schuster, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for stopping in while you're here in town. She's the founding and managing partner of McMurray and Schuster, law firm, obviously, specializing in compliance.
Compliance and litigation.
And litigation.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got a history of law practices I want to get into. If you guys are paying attention, you can find her on social media at MICH_SHU85. Was that your number?
I think that's the year I graduated from high school.
Mitch_Shu85 on IG and Michelle Schuster everywhere else. All you got to do is Google her. MSLawGroup.com if you need to hire a firm that knows what they're doing, because you know what you're doing. You've been doing it a minute, and you used to be the former.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. I think I'm going on 30 years now. It's hard to believe, right? When I'm only like 27, that I've been practicing law that long. But yeah, I used to be chief of Ohio's Consumer Protection Section in the Attorney General's office. Yeah, so we've done it from both sides of the desk there.
Are you aware of any corruption in government?
In government, huh?
Like, have you ever sat in rooms where they're literally figuring out how to screw the American public?
You know, I just don't think that happens. We'd like to think it does. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, but I personally have never sat in a room where we tried to screw somebody. But we've sat in rooms where we tried to go after people. Yeah.
For sure.
Who deserved it,
probably. Now, consumer protection. Explain kind of what that is.
Yeah.
You're protecting consumers?
Yeah. So every state and on the federal level, the Federal Trade Commission has a set of laws that just really broadly prohibit unfair or deceptive acts or practices in the marketplace. So any type of direct-to-consumer sales, there are things that you have to do to make sure that you're, clearly and conspicuously disclosing all of the material terms of those sales with consumers. And then there are some things that are just statutorily you're not allowed to do. One of the areas that I spend an awful lot of time in is telemarketing and lead generation and those types of things. So there's a whole other set of laws specific to those mediums.
Yeah. Well, telemarketing as an example.
Yeah.
Somebody picks up the phone, calls an old man that's 78 years old and says, "Hey, would you like to donate $20,000? And they say yes. That's technically against the law.
Are you speaking from personal experience here?
I'm close because back
it was the age thing, right? That was the giveaway.
Well, because about I don't know what it was. Let's say 91, I moved to Vegas. I meet these dudes. They're freaking making tons of money. Turns out they're telemarketing. Well, they got business licenses. They got consumer affairs certificates. They're supposedly legit as they can be. They went in and basically asked people for donations. Because I worked there for 3 days, thought it was stupid. But point being is they were asking people for donations, older people, to help kids stay off drugs. Well, if they donated $10,000, they were going to win something. And that was the truth. They were going to win something, one of 3 prizes. Yeah. And one was a car, and one was a statue, and one was something else. I'm like, I forget. But anyway, so they would call and people would donate foolishly. But these guys insinuated, but didn't say, they're winning the car. So the donation made sense. You see what I'm saying? So it was kind of shady, huh?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And, the FTC had some pretty significant litigation that they settled last year around those types of issues. And so, when we are talking about telemarketing, we're not talking about the types of things that you've just described that are just outright crimes
but you remember
and fraud.
That?
Oh, I remember that. Unfortunately, those types of things are still happening.
That was like forever and a day, and a whole bunch of people went to prison, and that was the telemarketing days.
Yeah.
But just to finish that story, because people are probably wondering, well, what happened? Well, so I worked there 3 days. I tried to get people to donate. They wouldn't donate. So I quit and, never kept doing it. But 2 years later, the guys that owned the place were all going to jail because they said it was fraudulent. Now, I said, and I honestly believed it, how is it fraudulent? Because I remember what they were saying, and it wasn't fraudulent, in my opinion, but I'm not a lawyer. They crafted the words to where you completely voluntarily donated the money. They verified it on a recording. They didn't say you were going to win anything other than what you were going to win. I don't understand how it was fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. So we could get
It
into...
was shady, but how is it fraud?
Yeah. Yes. We could get into a long discussion about sweepstakes rules. And so if there's a chance of winning something, there were probably some sweepstakes regulations that were problematic. But, I think in those situations, the reason those get the attention of regulators is because they are implying that something's going to happen. And I'm pretty certain there was probably never a car given away.
No, they did.
They did.
One.
Really?
One out of a billion people.
Wow.
Yeah, they made a ton of money. But
yeah,
again, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but when I heard about it, I was thinking, well, dude, I don't understand how that's legal to bust them. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you do more direct sales or lead generation?
Yeah. So obviously I'm on the other side now. I'm now helping companies comply with those regulations that I talked about, those consumer protection regulations, the telemarketing regulations, with lead generation, those types of things. And, I consider it my job. What I do every day is I help my clients sleep easy at night, because that's what I want to do. I want to make sure they don't have to worry about all those types of things, because I'm worrying about it for them. So, those are the important things.
So let's give the listeners, who, by the way, we call the Bomb Squad.
The Bomb Squad. Hello, and Bomb Squad.
Yeah, there's chiropractors, lawyers, doctors, blue-collar workers, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people with big businesses, people with small wishes and dreams. Mm-hmm. The whole gang.
It's beautiful.
So let's give them some knowledge to wake them up a little bit.
Sure.
Because nothing is worse than doing pretty well in your business, and then you accidentally do something that wasn't technically compliant. You weren't even aware of it.
Yeah.
What are some common compliance violations that most businesses are doing? They're just not aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me just start with what my number one piece of advice is. It's all about good customer service to start with. And so most of those problems that happen, the regulators, the reason they get involved is because there was a consumer out there that somebody pissed off, and they didn't take the consumer seriously. And so the consumer complained to the AG's office, the FTC, the FCC, whatever, the whole alphabet soup. And that's what gets regulators looking at companies. And that's what causes somebody to hire an attorney and sue a company. So it really all starts with that. And then beyond that, as I said, I do a lot with telemarketing, a lot with teleservices, customer service types of calls. And I think that people don't intuitively know that if they're making a sales call, there are just a whole series of regulations that apply. So those doctors and dentists that you represent, if they're calling to reschedule appointments, or maybe they've got a sale on teeth whitening that month, and they're calling their clients. There's certain things they have to do before they can make those calls. So some states require you to register. Some states may require you to scrub against the do not call list if you don't meet certain exemptions for that.
Even if they're your customer?
So there are exemptions on the federal level. You can call your current customers, and you can call customers who were with you for the past 18 months, or people who have made inquiries over the last 3 months. But there's timelines on those. So if you're a dentist and somebody hasn't been to see you in over 18 months, they're probably not a current customer that you're going to have an exemption for. So a lot of rules like that aren't intuitive. So, the advice is before you start engaging in those types of things, it's worth this small, it's not a large investment, it's a small investment to hire somebody who knows how to navigate those rules, because they are not intuitive. They are absolutely not intuitive. And even beyond that, even if you're not doing it yourself, when you're hiring vendors, vendor management is so critical. Knowing who you're working with, knowing who you're trusting your brand with, and what they do to comply with those regulations. And you want to have it documented. You want to do that due diligence
if
upfront.
I'm using a vendor and they do something wrong?
Yeah, you sure are. It's called vicarious liability. So if you hire somebody to market on your behalf, and they violate the laws, and there's several different ways that you can be held liable. But one of them is if you're just reaping the benefits of those bad actions that your vendor is engaging in. So it's something you got to be very careful about,
especially nowadays.
Yeah, because
like right now you have funnels and opt-ins and double opt-ins and, do not call lists. All that shit never used to be around, right?
Yeah.
Or was it?
Do not call laws passed in 2003. So they've been here for a little bit.
How do I bust somebody? Okay. I get calls all the time. I don't want them.
Yeah.
Telemarketers hit my phone when I'm not home. Why? And how do we stop it? Do you know how?
So we're stopping it right now. So I'm general counsel for PACE, so the Professional Association for Customer Engagement, and they're the nonprofit trade association that represents contact centers. So generally, I don't like to go out and tell people how they can sue folks that are in the contact center business. But what's happening now is that the laws have been completely ineffective because the ones that are violating the laws, for the most part, are the ones that don't care about the laws. So you can pass all the laws you want. It's not going to stop the problem. A lot of them are overseas, very difficult to get jurisdiction over them or to file a lawsuit against them. So the laws have not been effective with stopping telemarketing. And that is not a newsflash for anybody. It's probably one of the number one consumer complaints right now. But what is happening now is the Federal Communications Commission has charged the
the FCC.
The FCC, yes, the FCC has charged the telecom carriers to start policing the networks. So there's this new call authentication requirement called STIR/SHAKEN, and I can just tell you that the telephony engineers have a very funny sense of humor, the STIR/SHAKEN name being applied to it. But basically what it is, it's an authentication process that any service providers that are originating calls, so the VoIP service providers in particular, they are assigning a level of trust, an attestation to calls when they're being originated. And it goes from A through C, A being the best, B being middle of the road, and C meaning you're not really sure how those calls are coming through, like an international gateway. But with the STIR/SHAKEN call authentication, that attestation level travels with the call. And so by doing that, the carriers now know who's making the telephone call. So if there's problems at the other end, they know how to get back to those voice service providers to identify the people that are calling. And also they've put together blocking and labeling of calls. So if the calls that are being made from a specific VoIP service provider are really short in duration, huge numbers of calls that are being made, it's likely that there might be some issues with those phone calls because people aren't taking them and engaging in those conversations. And so they can block those calls. They can label, I'm sure you've seen it on your phone, as telemarketing or a scam likely.
Yeah, I've seen
those
that.
Types of things.
Can I sue them if I called someone and it says scam likely and it's me?
No, there's a safe harbor. The FCC has given a safe harbor to the telecommunications carriers. But
see, because I know people that have a business, and when they call me, it did say like scam likely, and I'm like, called them, and they're not a scam.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, that's bullshit. How do I fix that?
Yeah. Well, so there's the telecommunications carriers. They have a calltransparency.com website that allows you to register your telephone numbers so that you can show them that the calls that you're making are not scams or not telemarketing or whatever it is that you're trying to show that they are not. But each one of the carriers works with an analytics company. They're using analytics to determine how a call is labeled or if it's blocked. And they're required, if somebody notifies them that a call is being blocked or labeled in a way that it shouldn't be, they're required to answer that within a reasonable amount of time. And most of the carriers are saying that they will get back to you within 48 hours. So there are methods to remediate that. You've just got to have the right contact information with those carriers. And you can get that information on the U.S. Telecom website. So ustelcom.org. Each one of the carriers has a email address that you can send those types of complaints to. And for the most part, they have been responsive. Also, one of the big problems is people who are making these calls, for the longest time, they didn't know the calls were being blocked or labeled. It was, anecdotally, like you were saying, that, they find out from a friend, hey, your call just came through and it says scam likely. Or it's being blocked and they just know that their contact rates have dropped, but they have no idea why. And so that's something we've been working on as well. Not to get too technical here, but folks in the contact center world will appreciate this, that whenever a call is made, there's a cause code that's returned. And if you're getting a cause code 603, that means your call is being blocked. And so you need to go to one of those, one of those contacts at ustelecom.com that's listed there, and let them know that, your calls are being blocked and they shouldn't be.
When do you see a call code?
So so whenever a call is placed, that call code is returned. So
Only in a call center though?
You know what? I've never had to look at it beyond call center, but with every call center, those sophisticated platforms are going to have that.
But this won't.
Yeah, no, I mean, so, when you're talking about individual phones making telephone calls, people calling from their desk, those aren't the types of calls that are being blocked. It's the ones that are,
dialers.
Dialers. And they're dialing, hundreds of thousands of calls a day. And
that's crazy.
Yeah.
What's the biggest call center you've ever seen?
In the Philippines, probably. Very large call center for a very large U.S.-based consumer products company.
Do you work for them?
I do not now. And I don't think they're making the calls anymore either now.
But you did.
Yeah, for sure.
And the average customer you're looking for, not the average, but like the best avatar. You're not looking for a small mom and pop company. They probably just using cell phones, got a couple salesmen, no big deal. You're looking for the people, or the people that are doing this should be looking for you to help them out, which is, I'm making how many outbound calls a day?
It's not really based on the number, though, because if you think about it, these laws, the penalties are $1,500 per call. If you've got somebody out there that's just making 100 phone calls a day, 50 phone calls a day, but they're doing it daily, I mean, that adds up very quickly. Yeah, the statute of limitations goes back, as far as 4 years on some of these.
But those threats never get carried through.
Oh, sure they do. Absolutely.
In the car business, they would say, I forget what the rule was, but something about hiding people's finance information. You familiar?
Yeah, the Graham Leach Bliley.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We'd leave credit apps all over the place, and they'd say, that's 11,000 per occurrence, and they'd always tell the managers, that's 11,000 per occurrence, but nobody ever came in and did it.
Getting a spam risk call right now. I mean, how ironic is that?
You should answer it.
You want to answer that? We could have some fun with this.
Yeah, let's see if it's telemarketer.
It's probably no. I'm not going to do that.
I was hoping. It was funny you say that, because I was hoping one would call my phone, but I got Umail. You ever seen Umail?
Yeah.
And
I know Umail very well.
I blocked unknown, so now it won't even ring my phone an unknown number.
Yeah, Umail cooperates a lot with the regulators, and there's an industry traceback group that their sole purpose is to trace back these illegal calls to the VoIP service providers that are generating them. And Umail has basically a honeypot where they collect the pre-recorded messages, because I think those are the worst of the worst, probably. And so, yeah, Umail has been very active in trying to prevent illegal robocalls.
You talking about when you answer the phone and it says, "Hello, this is Alex," and you can clearly tell it's not a human being?
Yeah.
Those calls?
I'm just talking. So those, they call that soundboard technology. And there are some very good uses for soundboard technology, but the soundboard technology, they want to interact with you. I'm talking about just the straight out, hi, this is, insert company calling. If you're interested in insert product, press 1, those types of
what's wrong with that?
Pre-recorded calls. Well, nothing's wrong with it if you've got permission to call them. And
I don't think I need to.
Yeah.
I got your phone number somewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
I know, it's bullshit.
It just doesn't work like that.
It should.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, again, if I hit do not call, well, if they're on a do not call list and I'm running that number through it and they're not on it, then I should be able to call them.
Then you can call them. That's right.
So it's how do you get on the do not call list?
It's donotcall.gov, I think, is the website.
So if I put
I'm not
this
actually
phone
on the
number
do not call
there,
list. I might be one of the few people I know that isn't.
Well, maybe I'm not, and that's why they keep calling me, dude, because I get the dumbest. I get the fraud calls and the non-fraud calls.
Yeah.
And I don't blame companies for calling me, because, I'm an entrepreneur. You got to, more hands you shake, more money you make. But I don't like them either, especially the ones where I can't believe how brazen they are. hello, your social security number has been flagged for, and press 1 to talk to agent such and such of the, and I call them. And then as soon as you hear their accent, you already know this isn't an agent.
Yeah, see, that's a crime. And that's is like crime. The most despicable of despicable things you can do. I think it's absolutely a crime. It's
How
fraud.
Come they're not finding those
fraud.
Sources?
Because they're overseas.
So what?
Most of them are overseas. So in order to get those criminals that are overseas, they have to go through treaties that the United States has executed with other countries. It's a complex process. You've got to get the Department of Justice involved. But I will tell you, I've worked with some really great folks at the FCC that have made relationships with folks in the other countries that they're, letting them know you've got a call center that, let's say in the Philippines, that during the day in the Philippines, because they're on, the opposite, when it's night here, it's day there, and vice versa. So during the daytime over there, they're taking legitimate contact centers and then using them for those types of calls. And so they were able to get, it was either India or the Philippines, I can't remember as I sit here, but to run a sting operation on that call center and to shut them down, even though they were doing legitimate work at, this is my son now calling me. Uh-oh. That one I did answer by accident. No, that one, no, you don't want to take. That's anyway. I
always, like if my wife just called, I'd have to answer it.
Yeah.
You know why? What if something's wrong?
I know. Yeah.
So anytime someone takes the call, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Especially if they call back twice.
Yeah.
Like if he calls back, you better take it.
Yeah. Do you mind?
So at the end of the day, these calls that are coming in that are fraudulent, it's clear that they're fraudulent, right? What about the ones that, again, I'm talking about the people that are listening, because there's a lot of people out there just trying to call and make some money.
Yeah.
They tell their salespeople to prospect, go on LinkedIn, get their phone numbers, call them, and they don't know that they're violating rules, but they are. Yeah. And if they were to get cracked, it could put a small company out of business. What are some of those things that people should look out for?
For sure. So, so you're talking about engaging, I would say a lead generator, somebody to generate people who are interested in your products or services. That's why you hire those types of folks. And there are a lot of really great lead generators out there that are doing it right. Sales Hammer is probably a great example of that. But great lead generators out there. So what they're doing is they're setting up websites that are legitimate websites. They have products or services that people are interested in. People are providing their information. They want to be contacted. Yep. Lots of great lead generators and companies that are out there doing that. On the other hand, there are other folks that are maybe the Federal Trade Commission used this as an example a couple of years ago at LeadsCon, which is why I'm here in Las Vegas today attending that conference. But, using the example of having, maybe sweepstakes or promotions or things like that, and they gather information that way, and then they'll sell that contact information, not because a consumer has had direct interest in the product that company is selling, but just because they've provided their information. And, the key thing with calling these consumers, so you're making consumer telephone calls and you're not scrubbing against the do not call list, you've got to have consent to call them. And so it's just really, really important that as you're engaging those folks to generate leads for you, that you're doing your due diligence. You're taking a look at the websites that they're using to generate those leads, making sure it has all the right, language in it, that they're using the right language to get consent, and then that they're not maybe filling in with leads that weren't actually taken off of that website. So you got to pay attention to make sure if consumers are complaining when you make telephone calls to them. But it's just really critically important that you understand that, and that you have a defendable position before you go in, because you know that they've done what they need to do to comply with the law.
Well, now that you bring up Sales Hammer, that is an example. What if someone buys a bunch of leads from a lead source, and those leads are, I call them Karens, and they're like laying traps for these people, but you bought them from a company. Yep. Who's liable, the company or you?
Yeah. You're gonna laugh when I say it depends, because that's what all lawyers are going to say. It depends, but in that situation where they're setting them up, a lot of courts are saying that if you've taken steps to purposely get these phone calls, then you don't have injury. And if you don't have injury, you're not meeting the standards, especially in federal court, to file these types of lawsuits. It's called Article 3 standing. But so there are lots of ways that if you get caught up in these people that are trying to set you up for lawsuits, that you hire the right attorneys and, they put those plaintiffs through the right paces to make sure that, they're not doing these things to artificially manufacture them, because courts are throwing those out.
By the way, would you be the right law firm to hire?
Yeah. I joke around that, I'm on the compliance side of our law firm most of the time. And so I like to help companies beforehand. I like working with entrepreneurs. I like making sure that my clients can sleep easy at night. But the folks that don't hire us for compliance, they hire us on the other side for litigation. So we're very actively involved in litigation for TCPA cases.
Defending or?
Defending.
You don't prosecute.
We don't prosecute.
So, well, just use SalesHammer. So somebody buys SalesHammer leads, but SalesHammer didn't do what SalesHammer does, which is double, triple flip scrub.
Yeah.
And they get bad leads.
Yeah.
Who's liable?
So under the law, there's direct liability for having made a telephone call. So if that lead generator is making the telephone call and maybe transferring the call, if they're the ones who actually physically dialed the call, there's direct liability there. If the company who is purchasing the leads is the one that dialed that, there's direct liability there for having placed that telephone call. Now we could talk all about indemnification and contracts and protecting yourself that way.
But you should pay attention to who you're buying leads from.
Gotta pay attention. Yeah. Because even if the lead generator makes the direct call and they have liability there, there's this thing, as we were talking about before, vicarious liability. That you can be also liable for that telephone call. So just really, really critically important that you do your due diligence with the people that you do work with, because if there's trouble to be had, they usually don't go after the lead generator. They're not usually the deep pockets. It's usually the company that's placing the call that the lawsuit is, named in the
lead buyer
after the V. Yeah. The lead buyer.
After the V, what's that mean? Oh yeah. The versus.
Yeah. Smith versus lead buyer company.
Yeah. Well, I have an interest in SalesHammer, obviously. And I want to make sure that, because I always say, if a lead's not really interested or it's an old lead and you say, hey, this is an old lead we had that used to be interested, and someone buys it, it's not our fault. But if we were out there just putting up websites that are scraping people's data, they have no interest whatsoever in selling them, then I think, SalesHammer should have a problem. But most companies, they're just buying leads from any old lead company out there.
Probably not most, but a lot. There are a lot out there. I agree with you. And it's causing them problems.
Big problems.
Think TCPA litigation, it's always in the top 3 or 4.
What's TCPA stand for?
Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It's the reason this is such a dangerous regulation is because under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA, there's a private right of action, as I mentioned. So for every call, $500 to $1,500 violation or penalty. So, $1,500 per call, if it's willful, that adds up so quickly. And with that private right of action, you'll be very surprised by that there's this very strong plaintiffs bar out there that likes to file lawsuits, and they don't like to file it just with the one person who got called, but they like to file class actions. And so, you make 100,000 calls, you do the math, those numbers add up very quickly. And so that's the threat, these class actions. And, for smaller companies, that's a bet your business kind of proposition. Dish Network for a while there had the largest penalty ever, and it was in the $443 million or something for telephone calls, and it was because they weren't policing their vendors that were selling DirecTV. So very quickly it adds up very quickly.
And who got paid that?
So the plaintiff's attorneys got paid that mostly. It was the FTC in this one. So I'm saying that sarcastically here, but the Federal Trade Commission got paid, and in theory they're giving consumer restitution for those telephone calls. But
hold on, you say in theory. In theory,
yeah.
Yeah, but so the FTC wasn't harmed, but they got paid the $400 million.
Yeah. So
what'd the consumers get?
There's restitution. So the consumers would be
$400 million worth?
Yeah, no. So there's statutory penalties that the FTC uses. And so for each violation, with the FTC, it's and at the time I don't recall what it was, but it's 43,000 plus per call with the FTC. So
that's what I mean by scam.
Massive.
Like, dude,
it's massive.
That's another government scam.
It's definitely meant to be a deterrent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand, like, if I did something wrong to you, he came along, whacked me for the money, and then he gave you the money. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But if I did something wrong to you, he comes along, whacks me for the money, and he gets the money? Yeah. Like, who's he?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so let's take the government out of the equation because, I mean, the real threat, as I said, is class actions. And so you have these plaintiffs' attorneys that are initiating these class actions. Consumers are entitled to $1,500 per call. Most of them settle, but the ones that do go to litigation, consumers are rarely getting $1,500 per call. It's usually, somewhere in the, in the $10, $15 range. It's not huge amounts, but the plaintiffs' attorneys are walking away with $5 million, $10 million in fees. So they're the ones that are really, they're the ones that are really getting rich under the TCPA.
What about the defendants' attorneys?
Yeah. We don't make quite as much. We usually are in an hourly rate. And so our fees don't get up to $5 million in defending these cases. But you know what?
Why don't you get on the other side?
Right? Every time I'm talking to the plaintiffs' attorneys, they're busy, meeting with their builders as they're building their mansions. So I think so. But you know what? I don't know. I like to sleep at night. I don't know. I'm a business owner. I work with a lot of business owners, very involved in the entrepreneurial community, and I couldn't sleep at night if I was on that side.
Yeah, well, I feel you.
Yeah.
Is there any secret that someone could be like, oh my God, thank God I listened to that episode, that would, put a layer of protection on somebody's business?
Yeah.
That you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, and this isn't a sales pitch, but it is the most important thing you can do. You have to have an attorney that understands these consumer protection laws and these telemarketing laws, these marketing laws, because they're not intuitive. There are things that you are required to do that if you don't do, it's going to land you in trouble. And, a good example is just what we were talking about. If you're making telemarketing calls to consumers, you either have to scrub against the do not call list, you have to have an exemption, or if you make those telephone calls, you're going to end up, likely in a lawsuit. There are lots of people out there just waiting to trap you and to file a lawsuit. So, I mean, the best thing you can do is get an expert, get somebody who knows what they're doing to help you.
What about, I'm a company, I bought leads from SalesHammer. I'm calling the leads myself, but my salespeople are lying and saying the wrong thing. Am I liable as a company?
Yes, for sure.
So how do you stop that liability as a company?
Training. You
Training.
got to hire, you got to train, you do, and then you got to audit. I mean, you got to have policies and procedures in place. Before you do any of these marketing types of things, you've got to understand the law. You've got to have policies and procedures in place. You have to train your employees on those policies and procedures, and then you have to audit to make sure that they're following them. A lot of people do it through call recording, call monitoring, auditing sales, those types of things. It's the only way that you can have a relatively high degree of certainty that you're not going to run into some problems.
Do you ever have companies that hire you to train their sales team on what they can and can't do?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time going in and auditing companies. So they'll hire us proactively and, have us look at their campaigns, see if they've got any issues with, as I said, their policies or their procedures or their training. And then, doing a certain amount of auditing of either calls or whatever the issue is, they have us coming in and looking at. And as a part of that, what we will frequently do is have a training for the C-suite and train the trainers type of training. And really, what they find frequently in those types of trainings also is that their employees have questions. And they find out where a lot of their vulnerabilities are just because now they're hearing those questions from employees, things that they would have assumed that they already knew or knew they shouldn't have been doing.
Harassment, sexual harassment, not included in what you deal with?
No, not what we're involved in.
We had a lawyer do harassment training, sexual harassment, and it was
like how to do it.
That's what they did. It was the most popular of the sexual harassment training because they told you what you could do. I was just joking. I see you wrote that though.
Yeah. With that, did you find my list of things we couldn't talk about?
No.
Oh,
have I been talking about them? No, but it says too many lawyers focus on telling their clients what they can't do. We focus on telling clients what they can do and how it can be done, which means, because again, as a business, we're not trying to screw people. We're trying to make money. So I would want a lawyer to say, look, I need to call 1,000 people. How do I do that without breaking any law? And then you say, well, you need this, or you got to do it this way. Yeah. And then you're totally allowed.
Well, a lot of these laws aren't black and white. They're not. No. And so they're really
on purpose,
difficult.
If you ask me.
I wouldn't disagree with that. They're not black and white. And so, you've got this margin of gray, and you need to know you're in the margin of gray, and you need to know.
So the only way to do it is to hire you.
Well, yeah, I think, and there's nothing wrong with that, Brad. Let's just be very clear with that. But, and it comes down to even weighing the risk, right? You have business decisions that you have to make. And, this is this area of gray. And so for operating in that area of gray, we need to know it, and we need to know what the potential risk is. Is this something that, there's not a whole lot of risk because it's not something that people are complaining about, or that the laws are really meant to deter those types of things, or that there's not been a history of enforcement in those types of things. I mean, it's important to understand those types of things when you're operating in that gray.
Well, are you real familiar with SalesHammer?
I'm pretty familiar with it.
So
I'm familiar with Dane.
Yeah. So SalesHammer obviously is a lead company that sells leads, but we're triple compliant. Dane can tell you better. Supposedly, I made sure of it. But what's cool is we also provide training. Yeah. Because what good is a lead if you can't close it?
That's right.
So we do a lot of sales and closing training. However, listening to you, another big value there was, what if we had your firm, come in and do a little module on compliance, to where now we'll sell you the compliant leads compliantly. We'll teach your people all the compliance. So if they pull the, shit themselves, the company is protected. Because, dude, there's salesmen that don't listen to what you say. And if I can prove as a company, right. So if I can prove as a company, look, because our system tracks and monitors everything. Yeah. So it's like, look, this company bought leads from SalesHammer, which again, they're a little bit better lead, more expensive because they're compliant. Then we went and taught the salespeople and made sure that they clicked and agreed and all the compliant shit we need. On top of that, they trained the employee not to say it or not to do it. And we have the proof of it. So now when if the salesman misrepresents, misclaims, aren't I more protected as a business?
Yeah. So these laws have safe harbors in them for companies. And part of it is what I was already talking about, having those processes and procedures in place, training your employees. And then if something does go wrong, if you've had an accident, a mistake that, is a one-off type of thing, there are safe harbors in these laws. So, but I think that idea, Brad, is such a great idea for so many different reasons, but we would love to work with you to do something like that. The other thing is too, that, the SalesHammers of the world that are doing this right, that it's not even so much a compliance thing in my mind. It's that when you have those leads that are good leads, those are the ones that convert. If you have leads that aren't converting, either you have bad salespeople, which is something that you can help with.
We solve that.
Right. That's right. Or the people weren't interested to start with. So there was probably something wrong with those leads. So, the results.
But generally, it's not all bad leads. Sometimes you get a batch of leads where someone put in bullshit.
Of course.
They say they're married with $150,000 in income. So we sell that lead, and guess what? That's wrong. We find out that's wrong. Well, they put it in there. Yeah. All we did is collect it.
Yeah.
So how do you get around stuff like that?
You can't. There's not a thing you can do. Yeah. But that would be great technology to come up with. I mean, so if somebody's giving you false information like that, if you can produce the leads that were presented, and you can, a lot of people will use, the Journaya, the Lead ID, the Active Prospect type of validation for those. I think that's helpful to have those types of things. But really, what those mean is that somebody visited that website and provided the information.
Somebody doesn't have to be the person.
Yeah, somebody did.
Because I used to put my friend's name into some lead capture forms just to screw with them. Yeah. As a joke, start getting spammed. Prank, but there's no liability if you do that, is there?
For you, since you're putting in that false information?
Yeah.
I think there are a few companies that have tried to sue somebody for doing something like that. And I don't think they ever really work out very successfully.
Especially because it's a prank.
Yeah. It just...
Like you go to a sex toy factory and put in your buddy's name and he's married. And
have you done that? Say it isn't so.
Where they start getting spam.
Yeah, it's not the one-off. I mean, the ones that have problems, it's a systemic problem. They're working with lead generator that's not doing it right. And so systemically they have issues. And, the cases that are out there where there have been problems with lead generators that aren't doing it right, literally every lead has a problem. They were manufactured or, they bought leads that they claimed were these opt-in leads, but they were just, it was just aged data or whatever. So
is there a lot of those out there?
There's a few. Yeah, we come across them. We work with, we work with lead generators, we work with call centers, we work with the companies that hire those folks. And so we've worked with lead buyers and, the sellers of the products that are being sold. And we have run into some very bad ones. And so, you need to make sure. You just need to make sure you're doing your due diligence on these companies before you start working with them.
Is there any kind of a stamp of approval, like a Consumer Affairs, Better Business Bureau stamp of approval on lead gen companies?
There's not, but it's something that I'm working on right now. So hopefully next year when I come back for LeadsCon and we do this again, I'll be telling you all about the SRO that we've just put together.
Yeah, and then you basically are saying, okay, these guys are legit.
Yeah.
These guys are doing it right.
Yeah, yeah. So Pace
that would be a value to lead buyers,
huge, right? Yeah, huge. Well, and I would say for the lead generators too. I mean, that's the world's greatest marketing tool, right? Somebody's looked at me and given me the good housekeeping seal of approval. I mean, I think it's good for everybody, except for the ones that aren't doing it right, I guess. But yeah.
But I mean, again, I could fake that seal too.
Well, so Pace has an SRO, and they've had their SRO. I think we're going on 14 years now, and so that's what we do. We go in and audit those types of things. And so we have a website that has the companies that have gone through the Pace SRO and have gotten accredited.
Do you think anybody goes to that level to verify?
So for Pace, we do. It's a very involved process.
Are you like the Perry Mason of the industry?
Wow. Can I say I am? Yeah, sure.
Are you?
So I've done a lot of audits. I've probably done more audits
than
anybody
says,
else out there.
Dude, we got to get the best. Are they saying you got to call Michelle Schuster right away?
Yeah, they usually don't remember the Michelle. It's just the Schuster. Call Schuster.
Schuster.
Yeah. We take care of our clients. We lead by core values, and excellence is the first core value that we have. And, doing what's best for the client is the second core value that we have. And we take those things very seriously. When an entrepreneur calls me and they've been sued by somebody and they literally are looking at losing their business, I mean, we take that really seriously. We are,
who's
very
suing
aggressive.
them when this happens? FTC?
It could be the FTC. It can be a state attorney general. There are now city prosecutors.
So they start sending this company letters saying you screwed up, you violated this, you violated that. You're the one they call.
Yes. So we work a lot with companies that are being investigated by regulators. It usually starts with a subpoena or a civil investigative demand. So that's when we get brought in initially. It usually doesn't start with a lawsuit. It's our job to make sure they don't get sued.
Starts with a.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that when they should call you?
Yeah, because it's really important that you respond to that correctly. Because generally the first instinct, and I know, Brad, this would be your first instinct. First, there'd be a curse word probably that's thrown out there, and that I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a good guy. I do business right, and I am not trying to take advantage of anybody. But again, we talked about it. These laws aren't intuitive.
And you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. And so you don't call up the regulators with that type of response. You don't call them at all, actually. You call somebody and let us respond to those regulators. We used to be regulators, so we understand how they think. And the first thing you need to know about regulators is they do not think in a way that's reasonable.
Do they ever mount up?
They mount up in multi-state actions. All the AGs they get together.
Regulators?
Yeah.
Mount up.
They mount up. They do.
You never seen that movie?
I haven't. No. What is it?
It's called Young Guns.
Oh, Young Guns. Yeah. I think I have. I kind of remember. There were a lot of cute guys in that. I do kind of remember watching that in the 80s. Yeah, it's an 80s movie, right?
Plus it was in a song. It's famous. Regulators, mount up.
Oh, okay. Now I got to listen to this after I leave.
They called them the regulators.
Oh, okay.
How come there's not a business protection department or an employer protection agency?
Yeah, I think it's
like right now there's employee protection agencies, right? Equal opportunity employments and shit like that. Yeah. Everybody wants to protect the individual. Who's protecting the business owner?
Welcome to capitalism. Business owners, I guess they protect themselves, right? I think
there's an opening there.
Yeah, right.
There's some opportunity.
Yeah.
I'd pay a monthly fee if I had like almost a insurance. Is there such a thing? I just want someone to protect me.
Yeah.
One
we
time
can arrange that, Brad. I'll send you a monthly retainer agreement. We got that all taken care of.
Well, we don't do any calling and compliance things.
Yeah. Well, you guys generate leads, right? So
no, we don't.
Yeah, with Saleshammer?
Well, Lightspeed, not Saleshammer. Saleshammer,
gotcha.
like Dane runs that shit.
Sure.
I all I do is drive traffic. So if I'm doing it incorrectly, let me know. But
you're doing a great job.
My thing is sometimes, and I think I'm optimistic though. There's a lot of business owners that are good, solid people. They're breaking rules. They're just not familiar. They're just like you said, they're not intuitive. And they don't know. So if it's one of those things where someone will be like, hey, stop that. And you go, oh, I didn't know. And then you're good. Because like, if you didn't know, you didn't know.
Yeah.
But are there possibilities where they're doing some shit that will literally get the old USS FTC on their ass, where the first knock at the door is a major problem?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so perfect example, the Federal Trade Commission last week, they issued 700 letters to the largest consumer products companies in the United States. Everybody from, Amazon to, I don't want to start. Amazon, I don't mind throwing that name out there, but I don't want to throw out the other names. But they're on the FTC's website, and they sent out these letters that are called Notice of Penalty Offenses notices. And so they put them on notice that their endorsements and testimonials are problematic on their website. Either they're not real or they're not typical of the consumer experience with that company, that they haven't disclosed that maybe the endorser is getting paid for that endorsement, those types of things. So they sent out 700 letters to those consumer products companies, and they've told them either you start policing yourself or we're going to initiate some type of regulatory action against you. And they're serious about it. So, sometimes the regulators are giving you a knock on the door saying, beware, and they're sending that that shot across the bow kind of thing. But usually they don't. Usually they don't. And there's a reason the FTC is doing that. They lost in a Supreme Court case last year, and that Supreme Court case stripped them of their ability to issue penalties. And so they have another section in their statutory code that allows them to issue penalties if they put companies on notice. So that's why they've sent out those 700 letters. So that if they want to now file a lawsuit against them, they've given them notice and they can get statutory penalties.
So step one, if you're a company out there, get some intelligent counsel.
Yeah.
Step two would be train your damn people correctly.
Absolutely.
Step three is buy leads from Saleshammer. Right?
Well, the only one I wouldn't agree with is you got to have policies and procedures in there. No, I mean, it really is. It's a simple process. It really is. You got to.
But that's how you're like, if you're legit and you want to stay as legit as you can without as much possibility of trouble, because you can't guarantee anybody anything. You can sue anybody even if they do everything right.
Yeah.
But that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Pay attention, train your people, use Saleshammer. Because Saleshammer is going to train your people anyway.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we're going to train. Like if you buy leads from Saleshammer, I come in and I show your team how to close those leads.
That's great.
With ethics and powers of persuasion. And most people don't understand what that means. That means if you bought 100 leads from somebody, pretend they're all good leads, and then you just give them to your team. Let's say you sell 20 of them. Well, if you train that team, just selling, forget compliance. But now I want to talk about that. If you just train them better on selling and closing and building relationships and getting referrals, and your lead cost goes down. You train your team right, you will make 2 to 3 times the revenue from the same batch of leads.
Good customer service is so important. Yeah. Everything. You're right. It's good for sales, but it's good for compliance too.
Well, that's why we got excited about Saleshammer, because there's a million lead providers. There's a few good ones, and there's the good ones are all pretty much trying to be compliant, I assume. So what's different? Nothing. Saleshammer trains your team to close them, and now we should be also adding compliance in there.
I think it's a great idea.
How
sure.
many hours would it take to train the basic, salesperson, the basic compliance to where their liability drops?
It depends upon how detailed we want to get, but it would not be longer than a day. I think if you do a couple hours of training with your folks, that goes a really long way. If you really want to get into the details of it, you want to have question and answer, if you want to do those types of things, you can get that type of training done in less than a day.
Do you ever have a bunch of people wanting training from you?
All the time. Do training
How do
all
you
the
train
time.
them?
So there's a couple of ways. In the era of COVID, we've been doing a lot of Zoom and a lot of Teams training. And
You don't have any virtual training?
So you know what, we don't have like a training library, but there we do webinars. Our
bad.
law firm does webinars. We do it. We call them Thursday for Knowledge Thursday, Thursday for Knowledge Thursdays, Thursday for Knowledge Thursday webinars, where we take a different topic on every month, and we do training like that. So we have a whole library of videos on our website. No, those are free. Anybody can sign up for those.
But if a company wants you to come train their team on compliance, will you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. We do it all the time.
You charge it?
Yeah, we charge for that.
Now, but you don't have an interactive virtual training course on it?
We don't, no.
So it's not on demand? It's not in multiple languages?
No.
And
do
it
we
takes
need
your
to
time?
do that? Brad, what a great sales idea.
I would think.
Let's
too bad
do
you
that.
didn't know. Too bad
Hey,
you didn't know
I'll
either
hire you for
McMurray
that.
or Schuster.
I think I should hire you for that.
Well,
Maybe we'll do some service swapping here. Of course, pay taxes on it, but we'll do some service swapping there.
Yeah.
I like it.
When you say service swapping and you say pay taxes, that's the thing I'm looking into now.
Yeah.
I've made a bunch of money in the last 5 years and realized like I didn't have the right tax counsel. So we got audited a couple times, no problem. I'm thinking, because we
don't have attorney-client privilege here right now, right? Just
I don't even
teasing
know
you.
what that
Go
means.
ahead.
I don't even know what that means. But the funny part is
You're about to make a confession here. I was going to
I'm
stop
not.
you. I'm just teasing you.
Dude. I'm the opposite. I'm about to confess the opposite. So we got audited, and they came and went, and everything was great. And what's funny is the reason why they came and went and everything was great is because we overpaid. Like they're like, these guys are idiots. Don't say a word. Back on out. Everything's great. We were overpaying like you wouldn't believe for probably the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, that's just as problematic, right?
Well, I mean,
I
don't break laws, but damn, if I can write something off, why am I not? Well, because I didn't have the right damn help in that office. I didn't have the right counsel at the end of the year. So that's the point I was making. You got to have the right counsel. Yeah. So it sounds like McMurray and Schuster's the right counsel.
I think that's right.
And you just heard them recommend and say you should get Sales Hammer as your lead source if you're out there.
We've got a mutual.
If someone's getting a door knock right now, can you practice in all states or only in a few?
So we work with companies in all 50 states. We work with companies overseas. If we are entering court appearances, we have to get local counsel. And so we have a network of attorneys across the United States that we work with also locally. A lot of them are former regulators. A lot of them are, former attorneys general or consumer protection chiefs like we were. But yeah, so we work with companies in all 50 states.
So reach out if someone's listening to this and they're kind of getting in the beginning of trouble.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, if they want to stay out of trouble, give you a call and maybe hire you to just come in and do an audit and make sure they're not breaking any rules.
Yeah, that's the more fun thing to do.
Is that what you like to do more?
I love doing that.
How long does an audit take?
A day or two, generally.
That's not bad.
A lot of preparation beforehand, though.
What's an investment like that?
So it depends upon the company, anywhere, very small company, maybe 5,000, 10,000. We've done audits that get close to 100,000. It just always depends. It depends on the company and the size, the complexity of the audit. And I imagine you found gaping holes where if they didn't do that, they could have paid 10 times that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the key part of that is not that you just go in and audit and tell them what they're doing wrong. We help them plug those holes. We help them, correct those to do what they need to be doing. Figure it out. Yeah. Yeah. We figured it out with them. Folks, you heard it here. mslawgroup.com. If you want to, do you drop nuggets on social media or are you just kind of quiet and private? I do more LinkedIn than anything. Where's your LinkedIn? Michelle Schuster. Yeah. Yep. Michelle Schuster. Folks, go look her up. I'm telling you, this is like the Perry Mason firm. I don't know of anything other than Perry Mason. I've had a few Perry Mason moments. You're the who's like a famous attorney firm that everyone knows? Perry Mason. That's about the only one. Ally McBeal. Oh yeah, Ally McBeal. They're like the Ally McBeal. I don't know if that's a good thing. Of compliance. Brad, I've appreciated so much being here with you today. Thanks for taking the time to get to know me and letting me get to know you.
Well, my pleasure. And thanks for coming in. And folks, pay attention to compliance. If you cruising along making money and you're laughing and giggling, and then you get shut down because you did the wrong thing, said the wrong thing, whether you're aware of it or not is irrelevant, by the way, correct?
Correct.
So, pay attention. Share this with other people that might be out there playing games so they can get the help they need. And until next time, keep it real.
Dropping bombs with the real Brad Lea. Subscribe now.